Hey everybody, my name is Forbes Riley, and I'm an American actress and a TV host. And I was delighted when I got my copy of Missing, which is Extraordinary Relation of Ordinary People based on a real life relationship. It's well written. It's amazing. You know, it talks about a man who has lost his wife and his daughter, and it's very well done. I'm going to highly recommend that you go get your copy of Missing. It is a powerful, exciting read. Mr. Mian Moshe Zia. He is the author of Missing. And I want to give a big shout out and a kiss all the way halfway around the world to my dear friend. Check him out at Mia's website. It's called www.miamoshenzea.com. Missing, available on Amazon. Again, I'm Forbes Riley, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Sonic Web Studios specializes in custom web design, app development, social networking, search engine optimization, domain registration, email marketing, online stores, and more. Since our birth, we have been designing and developing immaculate websites and providing web solutions which are a cut above the rest. As a leading web designing enterprise, we have a team of extremely talented web designers who are well-focused and have the experience of working on multiple web developing platforms such as PHP, Magento, Custom WordPress, and more. Sonic Web Studios has been helping businesses of all kinds, whether big, small, established, or startup, impress their audiences with exemplary web solutions. We don't just create beautiful and functional websites. We give you a complete online solution with the main goal of enhancing your yearly revenues. We aim to give your business the online exposure and brand acknowledgement that will help you in achieving increased conversions leading to profitable sales. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level.
Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show. It's time to give a shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international award-winning author Mian Moshe Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, then you'll love Missing by Mian Moshe Zia. Available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. It takes place in 4 countries with 2 strangers and 1 target where truth is an illusion and those you love will be the first to go missing. It's available in paperback and ebook on Amazon. Missing by Mian Moshe Zia has garnered great reviews and is even loved by Hollywood celebrities including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today. Order Missing by Mian Moshe Zia, now available at Amazon.
It's now time for the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and themikewagnershow.com. Mike brings you great guests and interesting people from all across the globe. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another great episode of the Mike Wagner Show.
Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable, custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, time to give a shout-out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international award-winning author Mian Moshe Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mian Moshe Zia. Available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, and 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love will be the first to go missing. It's available on paperback and ebook on Amazon. Missing by Mian Moshe Zia has garnered great reviews and even loved by Hollywood celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today before it goes missing by Mian Moshe Zia, available on Amazon. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, and Apple. Coming soon to Podbean, Buzzsprout, Pandora, and TuneIn. Heard worldwide on Geo7, Radio Public, Himalaya, and more. take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel, and follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with a wonderful author who has a PhD in psychology, has a master's in history, and an ordained minister in Riverside, California. He has a doctorate in social ethics and also biblical studies. And he also has done a study on what is believed to be one of essential figures of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and thought to be a prophet by many Adventists. And this is also, she's thought to be a prophet and the Lord's messenger. And we're here to talk about the book, Ellen G. White, A Psychobiography. And live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios in beautiful sunny California, ladies and gentlemen, the very talented author of Ellen G. White, A Psychobiography, and ordained minister, Steve Daly. Steve, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you, Mike.
Well, it's great to have you on as well, Steve. And you have a PhD in psychology, you have a master's in history. You're also an ordained minister and a doctorate in social ethics and biblical studies. And you have a book called Ellen G. White, A Psychobiography. And it's just an amazing story. And before getting to all that, tell us how it first got started, Steve.
Well, I grew up in Adventism, so Ellen White was very much a part of the subculture growing up, and I became very interested in her during my senior year of college when something called the 1919 Bible Conference minutes were discovered. They'd been lost for more than 50 years, and these were minutes from a meeting of the major church leaders, all the major church leaders of Adventism, 4 years after Ellen White had died. And they were talking very frankly and candidly about her plagiarism and her problems and how they were going to deal with them and how so many of them didn't really believe her stuff, but they couldn't tell that to the church. And they had a real division in the meeting. The people that were really very critical of Ellen White were the majority, and they didn't realize that the people that were in the minority were ready to kill them. So,
oh my gosh,
it's a fascinating story because the minutes were so controversial that they buried them in the General Conference archives, and they were actually lost. People didn't even know they existed until 1974 when Donald Yost discovered them. And that was right when I was getting ready to graduate from college. So I decided right then and there I wanted to do a master's thesis in history on that whole issue. And, the more I learned, the more interested I got in Ellen White and Adventist history, and I taught it for many years in college and university level, and ended up doing 2 doctoral dissertations, one at Claremont and one for my PhD in psychology that dealt with Ellen White and Adventism. So the thing that really motivated me to write this book was in 2014, an insider at the White Estate decided to reveal documents, kind of like WikiLeaks. He released them out into the internet that had never been known. Even when I was allowed into the major parts of the vault, and supposedly I was given access to everything, just like other historians. But when these things got released onto the internet, we realized that the White Estate had been holding out, and it was some really controversial stuff, that she was an alcoholic, and that was her diary entries, and making statements about how God hates children, and how she saw this in vision, and it was just some really ugly stuff. And so I had written, all these academic works, and then I'd written a couple popular books on Adventist history and Ellen White. But I knew when those documents came out that I had to do a final concluding work, and I was really the only person who could write a psychobiography like this because I had the history background and the psychology background. So I took it upon myself to do it, and it took about 3.5 years, but it was just very fascinating. And I enjoyed the research and the study and the writing, and it's been a very interesting project, to say the least.
It sounds like as something Julian Assange would have gotten a hold of maybe back in the day, that would just add to his collection, getting hold of the Ellen White,
Right.
Yeah, and combined with WikiLeaks. I think that would have been a very explosive combination. Could you imagine that?
Yeah, definitely. And no one really knows who the insider was. I have a pretty good idea because there's so few people who could have done it, but I'd never say their name because I wouldn't want to expose them even if I knew it was true for sure.
Well, that's understandable because whatever goes on the internet stays on the internet, and of course,
right.
We don't have to know what it is, and we can talk about that much later on if you feel like it. You can be on the air, off the air. It's up to you. But of course, we're here to talk about the Ellen G. White book, a psychobiography here on the Mike Wagner Show. And what are some other explosive points that Ellen G. Whitehead wrote about? Like, say, there are some explosive points that really exposed the Adventism, and how were her views different from the traditional Adventism views?
Well, Ellen White has always been seen as the great last day prophet of the world in Adventism, and she's the singular prophetic figure. Adventists don't recognize any other prophets. And she made the most absolute claims for herself that, everything she wrote, every book she wrote, all the articles she wrote, all the testimony she gave were all directly given to her from God, and that, anyone who questioned this would be lost for eternity and they'd be cut off from the Holy Spirit. And, just all these absolute kinds of statements about her writing. So she doesn't really give people the option of saying, well, she was just a product of her day and she did the best she could. And no, she doesn't allow for that. You either have to accept that she was the complete last day messenger of God and everything she said was from God, or, you're basically condemned by her. And, there's a lot of great con artists out there. You think of Bernie Madoff and Charles Ponzi and Frank Abagnale of Leonardo DiCaprio fame, Catch Me If You Can. And, Joseph Smith, even the founder of Mormonism, was exposed as a con artist and a fraud. Mm-hmm. But Ellen White, in my opinion, she may be the most successful con artist in history because she got away with it better than all these guys. And she ended up with 20 million people worldwide believing she was this great prophet who everything she wrote was from God. And, obviously there are a lot of Adventists out there today, especially the most educated ones, that know that she plagiarized so much and that she had her faults, definitely, and they're kind of embarrassed of her. But that's not the main party line of the church. The main teachings and the 28 fundamental beliefs, they all say Ellen White is the last day prophet, and they don't own up or admit to any of her faults or lying or plagiarism or fraud. Or one of her very first visions that was so pivotal in converting a guy named Joseph Bates, who ended up being one of the three co-founders of Adventism. It was Ellen White, her husband James, and Joseph Bates. They were the three co-founders. And Bates initially didn't really believe in her visions, and it was just a really small, tiny group. So James and Ellen worked it out for him to be at a small gathering at a person's home, and Ellen White faked this vision on astronomy that's just absolutely fascinating. I go into it in detail in the book. But Bates was this huge astronomy fan, and Ellen claimed that she'd never been taught anything or ever read anything on astronomy. But she was taking all this stuff from Bates's book on astronomy.
Oh, my gosh.
It was just, and she acts this out and fakes this vision, and she's up on Jupiter and up on Saturn, and she's telling all this stuff that we know today to be completely inaccurate because, what we know in astronomy today is so much more detailed than what they knew back then.
Mm-hmm.
But Bates is believing that God's showing her all this stuff because she's saying things that are in harmony with his book, while she's denying that she ever saw his book or read his book when he questions her afterwards and stuff. So he ends up getting converted, through this con job that she pulls. And then and they really needed him because they were just totally poverty stricken at the time. They were newlyweds and they weren't cutting it. And they just desperately needed an older, mature, wealthy guy to get on board with them, and Bates ended up being that guy. And so, from that point, you couldn't separate the three of them. James and Bates came up with all the doctrine, and Ellen White always had a perfect vision to convince everyone that the doctrine they came up with was true. So it's a fascinating thing to study.
It sounds interesting, and when you talked about astronomy, made me think of this. If women are from Venus and men are from Mars, makes you wonder if it's true or not. That's what I'm thinking. So,
yeah. And one of the funny things she claimed to see in vision was that there were a bunch of beings on Jupiter that God showed her, these beings that were living on Jupiter, and that's kind of the extra thing she threw in to really get Bates all excited, and of course it couldn't be disproven in that day because they didn't have the technology or telescopes or the flights into space to disprove it. But she kept believing the Lord was like coming back and setting all these dates, so she never in her wildest imagination thought she would die before the Lord would return. So, she never in her wildest dreams would imagine that time would last so long that all her stuff would be exposed as lies and fraud and stuff. But that's what happened.
And of course, she also covers a lot of subjects as well, too. Religion, social relationships, prophecy, publishing, nutrition, creationism, agriculture, theology, evangelism, and also advocated vegetarianism. We'll talk about that in just a minute, and more in the book, Ellen G. White, A Psychobiography. But first, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, time to give a shout-out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international award-winning author Mia Mosensia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Mosensia. Available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, and 1 target, where truth is an illusion and those you love be the first to go missing. It's available on paperback and ebook on Amazon. Missing by Mia Mosensia has garnered great reviews and even loved by Hollywood celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today before it goes missing by Mia Mosensia, available on Amazon. Also, The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, and Apple. Coming soon to Podbean, Buzzsprout, Pandora, TuneIn, and more. Take The Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to The Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. And follow The Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. And support The Mike Wagner Show by PayPal at paypal.com/Mike Wagner Voiceover. And also on Anchor FM. Just go to Anchor FM/support. Also check out the gift ideas from Amazon.com/The Mike Wagner Show and Mia Mosensia for great gift ideas. We're here with author and ordained minister from Riverside, California, Steve Daly, of the book Ellen G. White, A Psychobiography, here on The Mike Wagner Show. And, before I talk about some of the things covering a broad range of subjects, which is part of Ellen G. White, A Psychobiography, and maybe you can just give some of the listeners a brief example of what is Seventh-day Adventism and how's it different from the other religions and faiths out there, like Catholicism, Presbyterianism, Lutheran, and more.
Yeah, the biggest difference, of course, is that Adventists worship on the 7th day, and they believe that that's the true day of worship, and that all the other churches that worship on Sunday are wrong, and that and they basically condemn Sunday worship and believe that Sunday laws are going to be passed before the end of the world, and they're going to be persecuted by all the other churches. And they have a whole bunch of strange, bizarre beliefs, and they can all be traced to Ellen White. Every single thing that Adventists believe can be traced directly to Ellen White. I can show that historically. Adventists will claim that their beliefs are based on the Bible, but take something like the Seventh-day Sabbath. They didn't get it from the Bible. They got it from Rachel Oakes Preston and the Seventh-day Baptists. And the Seventh-day Baptists had been around for 200 years before Seventh-day Adventists came into existence.
Wow.
But the funny thing is there's only 50,000 Seventh-day Baptists in the United States, and only 5,000 in the United States and only 50,000 worldwide. But there's 1 million Seventh-day Adventists in the U.S. and 20 million worldwide. And yet the Adventists got their Sabbath from the Seventh-day Baptists. And you ask, well, why is one group so small and the other isn't? And the reason was that the Seventh-day Baptists didn't have a person claiming that God showed them, that the fourth commandment was greater than every other commandment, and all kinds of garbage that Ellen White claims to see in vision that is what got Adventists to believe their stuff, There's no doctrine in Adventism that stands up from biblical scrutiny. It was always because Ellen White had these visions showing, it's Ellen White who interprets the Bible, just like for Mormons, it's the Book of Mormon that interprets the Bible. And Adventists are very much like Mormonism, only they haven't been kind of exposed as a cult to the same degree because Ellen White hasn't been exposed as a fraud and a plagiarist and to the same degree as what Joseph Smith was. And, it's, if people, if they read this book and really see everything for what it is, I think Adventists would be seen as a cult just as much as Mormonism. Mm-hmm. But Ellen White was amazing in her ability to kind of isolate and annihilate anyone who attempted to oppose her. And she'd have visions showing they were in league with the devil and all this kind of stuff. So she basically destroyed anyone who kind of tried to attack her for her plagiarism or any of these kinds of things when she was alive. Mm-hmm. And of course, Joseph Smith wasn't nearly as successful doing that. He basically got exposed and, had to pay a high price for his fraud and stuff. But, it's like the Bible says, nothing will be concealed without being revealed. And eventually stuff gets revealed. And in the case of Ellen White, I'm certainly not the first one. Walter Ray wrote the book The White Lie back in the 70s. Ronald Numbers, who's endorsed my book, wrote Prophetess of Health back in the 70s. And these were books that documented Ellen White's plagiarism to a great degree. But, the Adventist Church tried to deny that there was such a thing as plagiarism in Ellen White's day, and they even hired this attorney named Remick to try to prove that case. But it's a total joke because Connie Barrenhausen, one of the biggest publishers of Ellen White's day, sued her for plagiarism, and she immediately quit. The Adventist Church immediately quit publishing that book because they knew they were going to lose a lot of money, and they didn't start publishing it again till many, many years later when the copyright expired. So, and there were articles even in Ellen White's local paper, the Hillsburg paper, enumerating her plagiarism and concluding that she was an absolute plagiarist and literary thief. So there was no question, even in her own day, that she was guilty. But the Adventist Church has been very reticent to own up or admit to how flagrant her plagiarism was. And initially, she was just taking things that her husband and Joseph Bates came up with, and they came out of kind of a weird movement called the Christian Connection that was very legalistic, and they came up with all these weird beliefs and a 7-year theory that Christ was going to come in 1851 after he failed to come. And, of course, she was part of the Millerite movement that believed the Lord was going to return on October 22, 1844. So then they come up with this date 7 years later, and she came up with several dates at different times other than that. And, she just would take things that her husband and Bates came up with, shut door theories, no one could be saved except this small little group of people. Everyone else in the world was lost, and just really bizarre stuff that, proved to be ridiculous. So she started moving towards she told Adventists that they were not to read any book that wasn't by an Adventist, But then she went out and she had hundreds of books of other authors in her library, and she's just copying from them, taking, she learned to take better material than what Bates and her husband were giving her.
Oh, my.
She was really looking bad with some of the stuff she claimed to get from God, from them. But, even the stuff she took from other authors, let's take the health reformers. There was this huge phobia about masturbation in the 19th century, and even the Sears and Roebuck catalog had all these devices, chastity belts. Parents were locking their kids up at night so they couldn't touch themselves. And this was a widespread phobia, but the health reformers were the ones that really spread this in the culture. And Ellen White bought into that 100%. So she writes all this stuff where God's showing her in vision that every disease on earth can be traced to masturbation and premature death, and just the most ridiculous stuff. And she's claiming that God showed her all this stuff directly. And, that's some of the stuff that Ron Numbers really pointed out when he wrote his book, Prophetess of Health. But, she gradually learned to steal better material.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. You know what? These divisions are coming right now as well, too. If Hugh Hefner heard this, he would have come out and strangled her, made her work as a maid 24/7. Can you think about that?
Yeah. Hugh Hefner, he wrote this article about John Harvey Kellogg that's absolutely just hilarious, because Kellogg held a lot of these same views that Ellen White did, and they were published and written in major best-selling books of his day and stuff, and Hefner just completely destroys him for this.
Oh, my goodness. Like, you're hereby sentenced to work and clean with a toothbrush.
Yeah, I reference all that stuff in the book from Hefner and stuff, too. It's pretty funny.
Oh, my gosh. And of course, thinking about with Ellen G. White as well, too, with some of the things she's taken, from other books, excerpts, and everything else. But what about the Bible? It's like, has there been some that she has expanded, like certain chapters, or is it like certain chapters that she has just excluded out on purpose?
No, I mean, she's written on everything you can possibly imagine. 66 books attributed to her herself, and then all these compilations put together in her name after her death, because she just had ridiculous numbers of manuscripts, letters, testimonies. I mean, all she did really was sit up in her room and copy from other authors and stuff, and then if she got into political hot water, she would just invent a vision from God and destroy anyone who was trying to come against her, including, like her bookmakers, her actual editors, the people that were closest to her. I mean, once anyone questioned her, and once they came to realize, holy Toledo, she's plagiarizing from these people, her own editors, she turned on them and said they were demon-possessed. And I mean, it's just an unbelievable, fascinating life story because, no one could possibly have this many visions on every single subject you could possibly think of. And if a person knows anything about New Testament prophecy, they know that this is nothing like how God works with prophetic type people anyway in the New Testament and post-New Testament. And even in the Old Testament, God didn't give these ridiculously detailed visions with all this kind of stuff on every single subject you can imagine. I mean, it was just ridiculous that Adventists really ultimately bought into a lot of this stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's just, there's no limit. You can look at her index. There's 3 huge books that index all her writings, and there's really no limit to the subjects. I mean, just about any subject you can possibly think of, she claimed to have a vision on it and spoke for God on it. And, she went through the Bible and wrote like Acts of the Apostles, and she went through most of the Bible books, and like on the Gospels, she wrote a couple books, Steps to Christ, and all the stuff she wrote, she took from other authors, and basically some of it was good stuff. Some of it's very inspirational. If I could just take anything I wanted from any author today and not give them any credit for it, I'd come up with some pretty good stuff, and some of it would be very inspirational. And so, she has, like The Desire of Ages, her book on the life of Christ, she took from the best authors of her day outside the Adventist Church, that Hannah and all kinds of people who wrote on the life of Christ. And so she has some good, inspiring stuff in there, but it's all stolen, and it's nothing to do with God giving it to her. And that's the sad thing, is that she just grossly misrepresents God. And it's not as bad when she's writing inspiring stuff that might help people. Mm-hmm. But when she's, writing all her crazy stuff about masturbation and a million other subjects, gross racism, I mean, you're talking about some really gross stuff that I document in the book that she claims that God showed her. And that's where it really gets ugly, that she's grossly misrepresenting God and making God out to be someone who believes all kinds of ridiculous, stupid stuff, which is really sad.
Mm-hmm. And of course, speaking of, the stuff she'd been through and what she wrote and having visions of God and everything, what was her upbringing like, starting from, being as a child to being a teenager to being married? Like in the early days, you talked about the Seventh-day Baptist. What was it like for her, Ellen G. White? Was it coming from like a normal family, an abused family, or was it simply...
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit background.
It's a really good question. I go through her whole childhood, her family of origin, the fact that she was a twin. I develop the book chapter by chapter, looking at her life. She grew up in a relatively normal family. They were Methodists. She was the youngest of 8 children, her and her fraternal twin, Elizabeth. So the family was very busy trying to make a living. They were an agrarian, rural farm family initially, and they weren't cutting it. So they had to move to the city, and he became a hat maker. But they were so busy trying to make a living, which wasn't uncommon in those days, that the kids didn't get a whole lot of attention. And, Ellen's the youngest, so I think she felt a lack of attention her way. And then she has this terrible accident at the age of 9 where she gets hit in the head with a rock that some friend threw, not meaning to hit her, but it was a big rock. It hit her right square in the top of the nose. And initially it didn't knock her out. She kept walking with her sister, but then the swelling from the injury went into her brain, and she went into a coma for like 3 weeks, and they thought she was going to die. And her face was all swollen and distorted. Her dad couldn't even recognize her when he first saw her. And so it was a very traumatic accident, to say the least. And she never went back to school. She tried a couple times, but she never could complete any more education. She just had a fifth-grade education. And that accident was very pivotal, as I show in the book, because she now started getting all this attention. She became the center of attention in the family because they thought she was going to die, and they had to give her all this attention, and she was bedridden, and there was all kinds of stuff going on there where she really learned to manipulate. I call it, it's in the 3rd chapter, creative malady. This is true of a lot of famous people in history where they learned to take a malady or an accident and manipulate it into something where they, like, escape female roles, for example. Ellen White grew up in a time when, there were very prescribed roles for women, and it was pretty hard to escape them. But this injury really allowed her to completely escape traditional female roles, and she became much more ethereal, and she was a very fear-based person as a child. She thought she was lost for eternity and God hated her and all this kind of stuff. And it's after the accident that she starts believing that she's going to be some kind of spiritual person, and she gets into the Shouting Methodists, who are this very charismatic wing of the Methodist Church. Then she gets into Millerism, this fanatical group believing the world was only going to last for a year, and all preaching this all over. And so she got in these very fanatical movements, and when that all crashed and burned with the Great Disappointment in October 22, 1844, she was with this small group of people who were just devastated, and she kind of drew on her Shouting Methodist experience to make them think she was a prophet, and they all gathered around her, and that was the nucleus of what would eventually become Seventh-day Adventism. But it's a very fascinating story. I've read a lot of psychobiography in my life, and I think her story is about the most fascinating I've ever seen.
Very fascinating indeed. And, of course, one thing that fascinated me, that she actually advocated vegetarianism. For all you vegans out there, maybe tell us about, advocating vegetarianism. Was she like what was it, the godmother of it, or was it like, what was her view on that?
Yeah, here again, she got it from the health reformers of her day. And like so many things, she was completely hypocritical about it. Not only did she condemn meat eating, but she especially condemned eating unclean meats, That was like right out of the Old Testament. And so if you ate pork or something, you were going to hell for sure. Anything like, any kind of unclean meat that the Bible identified in Leviticus as unclean, then, that was just the end of the world. And when I grew up in Adventism, if you ate a hamburger or something, that wasn't good. But, boy, if you ate pork, you were dead. You were going to hell. And so the funny thing was she ate all these unclean meats herself. And she was a big meat eater, and and she hid all this stuff. It was just like her alcoholism. She was this absolute, teetotaler in her preaching, and she just slammed alcohol. She was an absolute prohibitionist. And then, we come to find out she's an alcoholic. She became completely addicted to her homemade vinegar wine, and came right to the point of death. And she admits this in her diaries, that she became so addicted that she was sure she was going to die, and she went through alcohol withdrawal syndrome and the whole thing. It's amazing how hypocritical she was, because what that tells you is that she knew good and well that she wasn't having these visions and they weren't from God, because the stuff she's laying on other people she flagrantly does just the opposite herself, like what she tells Adventists about their wills and what they can and can't put in their wills, just the exact opposite of what she does. So her whole lifetime, you just see this ridiculous hypocrisy underneath that was hidden generally from the church. It was very few people who knew about her hypocrisy, but the ones that did were extremely disillusioned, to say the least.
Yeah, I can imagine when you talked about eating clean and unclean meats. In her case, I can imagine, Father, for I have sinned for eating at McDonald's, having a Budweiser afterwards. So,
right.
Oh my gosh! And of course, child guidance, writings on child care, training, and education. Maybe just a bit about that before, just wrapping up the book as well.
Yeah, I mean, she grew up in this very legalistic mindset. The part of Methodism that she embraced, the shouting Methodists, were very legalistic, even though they were charismatic, which is a funny combination. But I go into the book how legalistic they were, in addition to being just extremely fanatically charismatic in ways that are quite humorous. But anyway, she's coming out of this gross legalistic background of fear, and fear is everywhere in her life experience, and she projects that onto others. She just has so much fear in her writings, and Adventists live in a subculture of fear. They all fear the time of trouble and they're going to be lost. And I mean, it's just amazing how much fear there is in the subculture. But child guidance, you read that. She told her own boys, that if they disobeyed, God didn't love them, and, God hates those that don't disobey, as including children. Any children that disobey, God hates them. And she was writing this in her testimonies and books. And, I mean, but a lot of that came out of her diaries and the stuff that was exposed in 2014. And the White Estate came out the next year, which was the 100th anniversary of her death, and they said, in honor of our openness and how open we want to be, we're going to publish everything Ellen White ever wrote. Well, it had already been exposed on the internet the year before, so they were trying to act like they were just this great, open, honest group of people, when just the opposite was true. They were absolutely gnashing their teeth that an insider had exposed that stuff.
And again, a big thank you to Julian Assange for that one as well. So I'm sure you're probably happy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, and we're going to be just recapping the book, Ellen G. White, A Psychobiography, with author Steve Daly and the Mike Wagner Show. We'll be back in just a minute. Listen to the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Also brought to you by our official sponsor, the Mike Wagner Show, international award-winning author Mia Moshenzia of the book Missing, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. We'll be back with author Steve Daly of Ellen G. White, A Psychobiography, after this timeout.
The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level.
Hey everybody, my name is Forbes Riley, and I'm an American actress and a TV host. And I was delighted when I got my copy of Missing, which is Extraordinary Relation of Ordinary People, based on a real-life relationship. It's well written. It's amazing. It talks about a man who has lost his wife and his daughter, and it's very well done. I'm going to highly recommend that you go get your copy of Missing. It is a powerful, exciting read. Mr. Mian Moshenzia. He is the author of Missing. And I want to give a big shout out and a kiss all the way halfway around the world to my dear friend. Check him out at Mia's website. It's called www.miamoshenzia.com. Missing, available on Amazon. Again, I'm Forbes Riley, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, it's Mike from The Mike Wagner Show. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on over 30 podcast platforms, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, Apple, and more. Coming soon to Podbean, Buzzsprout, Pandora, and TuneIn, where The Mike Wagner Show interviews great guests, cool conversation, lots of laughs, coffee, and more. Take The Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device, subscribe to The Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel, and follow The Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today.
Hey, this is Ray Powers. And if there's one thing you can count on in these unpredictable times, it's that you're in good hands getting some great radio, courtesy of The Mike Wagner Show.
We're back with author and ordained minister Steve Daly of Ellen G. White, a psychobiography here on the Mike Wagner Show, and you can find that on Amazon and other sites. And maybe you can just a couple of things here. Most importantly, maybe just one or two. We can just wrap up the book. Maybe something the listeners should know about. And where can we find this book?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. I just signed a contract with a person who's making an Audible book of it, so it's going to be available to listen to as well. And it's at Barnes & Noble. It's on my website, egwpsychobio.com. They can buy it there as well. And other bookstores, whatever bookstores work with Page Publishing on the East Coast, they're the ones that publish the book. But it's, I know Barnes & Noble's pretty much nationwide, and of course Amazon's pretty accessible to everyone, so I think those are the two major sources that people get it from.
Okay, we will certainly do that as well, too. And what can we expect from me in 2021 and beyond, Steve?
I'm actually co-authoring a book called Harnessing God, the Nature of Religious Abuse right now that I'm excited about. And, Lori Sekar is the co-author on that, and she kind of writes out of her own experience. She's a woman that went through all kinds of bizarre religious abuse. And then every other chapter, I kind of analyze and talk about, what the implications are of religious abuse in general and the many different forms that it takes and that kind of thing. So it's kind of a natural outgrowth of this Ellen White book, but because she's so guilty of religious abuse in so many ways, it's really frightening to see.
Mm-hmm. And it does sound like it, too, especially having run rampant, and it's also very helpful as well, too. And who do you consider your biggest influence in your career, Steve?
Well, John Wimber was a huge influence on me. He was the pastor of the Vineyard. He's the founder of the whole Vineyard movement and church. And in 1985, I started attending his church, even though I was a Adventist University pastor and had a high-profile position in Adventism. And I was really wanting to leave Adventism and join the Vineyard at that time. And because I had such a high-profile position, he encouraged me to stay and pray about it, and I did that, and God just convicted me to stay in Adventism until it rejected me, trying to bring a more healthy change in the church. And I did write a book in 1992 called Adventism for a New Generation that was a call for the church to kind of wake up and change its ways and move in a new direction. And it did have a big influence, but ultimately the church rejected me because it's a very hierarchical structure. It's kind of like the Catholic Church with the Pope and the bishops and all the hierarchy. And if you challenge that or go against that, ultimately they're going to throw you the door kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But, I really didn't find Adventism to be that effective or meaningful. That's why I started attending the Vineyard in 1985, and I really considered that to be my home church. And Wimber was like my pastor, and I was really blessed by him.
Wow, that's amazing. And where can we find more about the Vineyard Church? This is interesting.
Yeah, there's all kinds of books. I mean, Wimber himself wrote the book Power Healing, Power Evangelism. He had an amazing ministry. I mean, when you look at his life story, that's just a fascinating one. He was a rock musician. He was the manager of the Righteous Brothers in Vegas, and had never even read a Bible, and God pulled him out of that life and ended up calling him to be the founder of this amazing church. So that
wow.
Their worship music is the most famous worship music all over the world, even today. And, it's just been incredible how the Vineyard movement grew and blossomed, even during Wimber's lifetime. He's dead now, but, it was an unbelievable movement. But now it's not, you have a whole bunch of different kinds of Vineyard churches, because Wimber wasn't a controlling person, and he didn't want to turn it into a denomination. Mm-hmm. So he allowed every Vineyard church to kind of have the freedom to take on their own belief system. And so now there's so much pluralism and diversity in the Vineyard church, you never know for sure what you're going to find when you go to a Vineyard church. But, I loved the Anaheim Vineyard, and I loved having Wimber as a pastor over the years that I went there.
Wow, that is very amazing. Love to check it out one day. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point, Steve?
Best advice? What I always say to my church members is 1 Thessalonians 5, test all things, hold fast to what is good. Just like the Bible says, test everything. We're living in crazy times today.
Oh, yes.
And you really need to test all things by a Christ-centered, Spirit-filled understanding of God's Word, and hold fast to what is good, because a lot of unstable stuff is going on today, and there's a lot of deception out there, and just like Ellen White engaged in a lot of deception, there's a lot of other forms of deception out there that people need to really be wary of and testing.
Mm-hmm. Testing is very important. That is great advice. Once again, author and ordained minister Steve Daly out of Riverside, California, here on the Mike Wagner Show. Steve, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. The book, Ellen G. White, A Psychobiography, it's a fascinating book. And once again, tell us about your upcoming projects, what's your website, how do people contact you, where can people purchase or check out your book?
Yeah, the website, egwpsychobio.com, and that has a bunch of stuff about the book, articles and other things, and also a store where they can buy. I have 27 books I've written, so there's other books available on that site as well. But, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, I encourage people to check it out. Regardless of if they have Adventist background or not, I think they'll find it and in fact, I hope the book gets made into a movie, because I think it would be just too fascinating hours for people to, sit down and see what her life was really like. It's just absolutely.
Well, that's a good idea. I'm certainly looking forward to that. If it does come to fruition, we'd love to have you back on. Once again, Steve Daly, author of Ellen G. White, A Psychobiography. Steve, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. Love you back on in 2021 and beyond. And don't forget to keep in touch. You've been absolutely terrific. I learned a lot from you.
Thanks so much, Mike. Thanks so much for inviting me. Have a great one.
The Mike Wagner Show is powered by Sonic Web Studios. If you're looking to start or upgrade your online presence, visit www.sonicwebstudios.com for all of your online needs. Sonic Web Studios specializes in custom web design, app development, social networking, search engine optimization, domain registration, email marketing, online stores, and more. Since our birth, we have been designing and developing immaculate websites and providing web solutions which are a cut above the rest. As a leading web designing enterprise, we have a team of extremely talented web designers designers who are well-focused and have the experience of working on multiple web developing platforms such as PHP, Magento, custom WordPress, and more. Sonic Web Studios has been helping businesses of all kinds, whether big, small, established, or startup, impress their audiences with exemplary web solutions. We don't just create beautiful and functional websites. We give you a complete online solution with the main goal of enhancing your yearly revenues. We aim to give your business the online exposure and brand acknowledgement that will help you in achieving increased conversions leading to profitable sales. Call 1-800-303-3960 or visit us online at www.sonicwebstudios.com to get started today. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 20% off your project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level.
Hey everybody, my name is Forbes Riley, and I'm an American actress and a TV host. And I was delighted when I got my copy of Missing, which is Extraordinary Relation of Ordinary People based on a real-life relationship. It's well written. It's amazing. You know, it talks about a man who has lost his wife and his daughter, and it's very well done. I'm going to highly recommend that you go get your copy of Missing. It is a powerful, exciting read. Mr. Mian Moshe Zia. He is the author of Missing. And I want to give a big shout out and a kiss all the way halfway around the world to my dear friend. Check him out at Mia's website. It's called www.miamotionsea.com. Missing. Available on Amazon. Again, I'm Forbes Riley, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and themikewagnershow.com. Please support our program with your donations at themikewagnershow.com. Join us again next time for another great episode of The Mike Wagner Show.